Óengus mac Óengobann, better known as Saint Óengus of Tallaght or Óengus the Culdee, was an Irish bishop, reformer and writer, who flourished in the first quarter of the 9th century and is held to be the author of the Félire Óengusso and possibly the Martyrology of Tallaght. Little of Óengus's life and career is reliably attested. The most important sources include internal evidence from the Félire, a later Middle Irish preface to that work, a biographic poem beginning Aíbind suide and amne, and the entry for his feast day inserted into the Martyrology of Tallaght. Background: he was known as the son of Óengobann and grandson of Félire, who is mentioned in a later genealogy as belonging to the Tallaght.Little, a ruling kindred in the northeast of Ireland. A late account prefaced to the Martyrology asserts that Óengus was born in Clúin-Ednach or Aíbind, not far from the present town of Mountra, and brought up at the monastic school founded there by St. Fontaine, where also his body was buried. The claim may be spurious, since the Félire itself accords no such importance to the monastic foundation or its patron St. Fontaine. Tallaght. It is sufficiently clear that Óengus became a cleric, since he describes himself as such in the Félire using the more humble appellation of pauper. He was an important member of the community founded by St. Óengus at Tallaght in the borderlands of Leinster. Óengus is described as his mentor. There are reasons for believing that Óengus was ordained to the office of bishop, a denomination which is first assigned to him in a list of saints inserted into the Martyrology of Tallaght. If so, his influence may well have extended to the reformed communities which were associated with Tallaght, many of which were founded in Óengus's lifetime. In fact, two such monasteries in Limerick and Laois, both of them known as Saint Óengus, bear his memory in name. Writings: Félire Óengusso. The literary effort most commonly attributed to Óengus is the Old Irish work known as Félire Óengusso, which is the earliest metrical martyrology, a register of saints and the feast days, to have been written in the vernacular. The work survives in at least 10 manuscripts, the earliest being Liber Breac of the early 15th century. The martyrology proper consists of 365 quatrains for each day of the year and is framed between a lengthy prologue and epilogue. Later scribes added a prose preface, including material on Óengus, and accompanied the text with abundant glosses and scholia. Óengus's principal source was the Martyrology of Tallaght, an abbreviated version in prose of the Martyrologium Hieronymianum, but with a multitude of Irish saints added to the respective feast days. Other sources are given in the epilogue as an antigraph of Jerome, the Martyrology of Eusebius, and Ireland's host of books. Dating the calendar. The precise date of the original composition has proved difficult to ascertain. The usual method of determining a terminus post-quem has been to argue from the careers of saints and kings referred to in the text, many of whom remain obscure. The terminus ante-quem is a different game. In view of the selective nature of the Félire, arguments from silence have little to recommend it, at least in individual cases. What would have been instructive, the year of Óengus's death, is unknown, but his education by Martyrology must at least mean that he did not outlive the 9th century. The one thing that is usually accepted is that it was written no earlier than 797, when one of the rulers described in the prologue as having deceased, Donchad mac Domnell, king of Tara, died. Rudolf Thurnason postulated a date before 808 on grounds that the reference to the death of Bran Ard Ardchen mac Murachig, king of Leinster, should be attributed to political sympathies in the reign of his successor Fin's Nectar mac Selig. Orion, however, has rejected the traditional date in favour of a later range, between 828 and 833, while more recently, Dumville has cast doubt on Orion's conclusions and dating methods. First, Orion argues that such sympathies as Thurnason refers to are pertinent only to the next kings in the royal line, Selig mac Brain and Connor mac Donchada, sons of Bran and Donchad respectively. Dumville objects that this political argument glosses over the probability that while Bran and Donchad gave way to overlords from rival dynasties, they were nevertheless succeeded by members of the family in their own Tuatha or Mordwatha. The inclusion of these kings in the prologue therefore offers no good reason to move up the terminus antiquem. Second, Orion sees reason to identify the saints Aaron, Modamok and Flan with Eirfinan, abbot of Tallaght, Dimin of Arad and Flan mac Fairshelaig, abbot of Lismore. Dumville, however, points out a number of weaknesses and concludes with Stokes that no saint or other person who certainly died in the 9th century is mentioned. Third, having identified a number of saints in the Martyrology of Tallaght, the primary model for the Félire, he proposes obits extending to that of St. Cleim and Acuten of St. Temnan of Linduishal, who died in 828. In Dumville's view, the evidence is ambiguous, since the relationship of the extant copies of the Martyrology of Tallaght to the lost original which served as the source for the Félire is yet unclear. Centers of worldly and spiritual power. Something of Óengus's view on secular politics appears to come through in his prologue to the Félire. In a number of stanzas, the deserted sites of Tara, Cruachan and Amain Mackey are interpreted as the former sites of fortresses in which powerful rulers resided before the coming of Christianity. These pagan seats of power are contrasted with the great ecclesiastical centers of Ireland which were flourishing in Óengus's own time, such as Armagh and Clonmacnoise. According to the historian T.M. Charles Edwards, Óengus was responding to the military domination of overlords of his day, commenting that worldly glory is transient, while spiritual power is enduring. To similar effect, Óengus also holds up the example of Mael Ruain, who continues to offer support and comfort after his death, against that of the contemporary warrior kings Donchad and Bran Ardchen, whose strong exercise of power meant no such thing after theirs. Martyrology of Tallaght. It has been suggested that Óengus was actively involved in the compilation if not the composition of the augmented Martyrology of Tallaght. This was a work of Northumbrian provenance, probably from Lindisfarne, which first passed through Iona and Bangor, where Irish scribes began to make some additions. The manuscript finally arrived in Tallaght, where it received the majority of its Irish editions. It was written by someone of Óengus's learning and literary skill at Tallaght, and there are strong indications that this was Óengus himself. First of all, the sources named by Óengus in the epilogue to the Félire would make more sense if these were the materials used for the Martyrology of Tallaght. Second, a number of saints whom the same epilogue claims to have included are found in the Martyrology of Tallaght, but not in the actual Félire. Death. According to the Martyrology of Tallaght, Óengus's feast day, and hence the date of his death, is the 11th of March. The poem beginning Aíbind suide amne claims that he died on a Friday in attested.The. Together, these have produced a range of possible dates such as 819, 824 and 830, but pending the dates of the martyrologies, no conclusive answer can be offered. His metrical life tells that he was buried in his birthplace Clonina. Reputation. becoming a hermit. He lived for a time at Serbia, where, on the banks of the Nor, he is said to have communed with the angels. From his love of prayer and solitude he was named the Culdee, in other words, the sealed acute or servant of God. Not satisfied with his hermitage, which was only a mile from Clonina, and therefore liable to be disturbed by students or wayfarers, Óengus removed to a more solitary abode 8 miles distant. This sequestered place, 2 miles southeast of the present town of Maribra, was called after him the Desert of Óengus, or Dus Erinos. Here he erected a little oratory on a gentle eminence among the Dus hills, now represented by a ruined and deserted Protestant church. His earliest biographer in the 9th century relates the wonderful austerities practiced by Saint Óengus in his desert, and though he sought to be far from the haunts of men, his fame attracted a stream of visitors. The result was that the good saint abandoned his oratory at Dus Erinos, and, after some wanderings, came to the monastery of Tallaght near Dublin, then governed by Saint Óengusso. He entered as a lay brother, concealing his identity, but St. Óengusso soon discovered him and collaborated with him on the Martyrology of Tallaght.